And lovely. Thank you, Damon. Um, okay, just going to introduce myself. First of all, thank you very much for coming, everybody. You're welcome to put your cameras on if you want to. I really don't mind. It's just me. My name's Kim. I'm a childminder. I've been a childminder for 25 years, and I'm in Colchester. And I'm also an area lead on the Experts and Mentors group program. And I'm the childminding partner for the Stronger Practice Hub. So I do a bit of all sorts of different things, but I really want to help childminders, support them to be self-reflective and to look at how their practice works. And I'm hoping in this session and in the session we do next week, that I'll talk a little bit about something, and then we can do a little bit of chat, asking questions, sharing ideas, that type of thing. So what we're going to talk about today is how to support communication development. I would say that if I came to all of your settings, most of you would be doing these things anyway, but it's still really good, isn't it, to be self-reflective and to look at different ways of doing things to make sure we're really doing them in the best possible way we can to support children's outcomes. So we're going to be looking at a thing called the SHREC approach. It's nothing to do with Pixar. It's SHREC, and it's an acronym, and I'll explain that in a moment. But it's an easy way to remember how to have really good, high quality interactions with children. And it's based on evidence of what really works. So we use evidence from a thing called the Education Endowment Foundation. And so we know that this isn't just sort of made up, someone thought this would be a good idea. We know that these approaches really, really work to support children's communication outcomes. And we also know, don't we, all of us know that communication is one of those things that is just so vitally important to children's development. I would say perhaps the most important part of early childhood development. So anything we can do to support that and to improve children's outcomes has a massive effect on their outcomes in later at school and even into adulthood. So luckily for us, we're at the end of the sort of age range where it is super, super easy to support communication. But it's still, as I say, handy to sort of have these ideas in the back of your head just to make yourself think, am I doing it in that way? So the SHREC approach, let's have a look. Excuse me while I refer to my notes. I've only just finished work and I didn't get a chance to sort of read through things before after the children left. So SHREC, SH stands for shared attention. That's a really simple way of just saying, when a child tries to communicate with you in whatever way that is, it could be a baby looking at you, it could be a child showing you something, it could be a child talking to you, showing respectful attention. So coming down to their level or making eye contact, having the right facial expressions so that they know they're getting a response in the same way that we would want a response if we were talking to someone. So I'm talking to you now. I can't see any of your faces, but hopefully you're all looking at me and going, yes, yes, I see exactly what you mean. And that's what we want for children, because if we tried to talk to someone and we had a blank response, we really, really wouldn't feel inspired to carry on communicating, would we? So look, I can see Claire's there. She's looking responsive and she's smiling and everything. So thank you, Claire. So that's what we're saying, shared approach, shared attention, which is just really means being attentive to that child as that child's trying to communicate with you. That's really super easy, isn't it? It means even when you're busy, even when there are other children around, just look at that child, nod. You might make a comment, you might smile, you might look at whatever it is they're trying to show you. Then R is respond. And the next one is expand. And I think these two sort of overlap a little bit, because for respond, we're talking about following the child's lead. So child's pointing at a bird, we say, oh, you can see the bird. Or the child's clapping and you say, oh, you're clapping your hands, that type of thing. So you're reinforcing what the child is trying to show you and trying to communicate. But also, something I think is really important here is we're using words in context, because this is something that's really important for children when they move on later into school, is having the sort of a word bank in their head of words that are in context. So when you're talking to children, it's really important to use words that they later can refer to. So you're digging a deep hole, you're trying to think off the top of my head, digging a deep hole, you're stirring the porridge, you're splashing the water, using words that really help children to sort of understand, oh, that's what splashing means. That's what deep means. That's what stirring means. Sometimes if we're just looking at a book with children, that doesn't always embed that knowledge in the way that it does if they're actually doing something. We're looking at a big tree. It's a really big tree. And that's the way you know what big means, because you're seeing something really, really big. Oh, yeah, it suddenly makes sense. It's a really big tree. So the next part of SHREC, of the acronym, is expand, E for expand. So that sort of overlaps a little bit, because depending on what you were actually talking about or how the communication was going, you might respond and expand in the same sentence, mightn't you? But generally speaking, what we mean by expand is to gently expand that sentence that the child has said to you. So some of you that I've spoken to before will already be familiar with this, but a good example is a child points at a bus and says bus, and you respond, a big bus. And then the next time you see a bus, the child says, a big bus. And you say, oh, a big red bus. You're just adding on one word or maybe two words to the sentence. You're not correcting the child. You're just expanding this sort of word bank. So things start to make more sense to children, and they can hold all this vocabulary. They might not use it straight away, but they're holding it all in there, and it's making sense. Yes, that's what big means. Big means when I see something as big as that big elephant we saw at the zoo, or that big tree. Yes, that's what red means. Red means those really red tomatoes or those really red strawberries we went to pick. So using words in context like that is really, really important. At the end of this, I've got something something to show that I use with the children in my setting, which I think helps with that. And the last one is C, which is conversation. So it's really easy. Conversation really just means that you're having a two-way conversation with the child, as you would with an adult. Part of the problem, I think, as adults, is that quite often the communication we have with children is asking them questions or giving them instructions or telling them things, and that's not really a conversation, is it? A conversation is sitting down, talking about something, they respond, you respond, and you have a sort of a nice two-way conversation going on. And that's a really useful social skill for children, but it also helps to expand their conversation and their communication development, because they're being listened to, someone's talking to them about something they're interested in, they're using words, you're using extra words, you're sort of bringing it all together in a conversation. Of course, it doesn't have to be a very long, complex conversation, but imagine if the only communication you had with someone was them saying, it's time to go and put your shoes on, or it's time to go to the toilet, or go and wash your hands. That doesn't really inspire any two-way conversation, does it? But we can show children the respect of having a conversation with them, even a very small, gentle little conversation about the bus or about the tree or whatever it is that we're looking at that day and the child is interested in and trying to communicate to us. It's all about following the child's lead. So I'm just going to recap that SHREC thing. So SH, shared attention. Get down on the child's level, or at least give them eye contact so that they know they've been heard, and that whatever it is they're trying to communicate to you, you have paid attention to it. Respond. So follow the child's lead and respond to whatever it is that they're trying to show you. Oh, that's a lovely flower. Something like that. It doesn't have to be anything too complicated, but again, it just tells the child you've been heard. You've tried to communicate and your communication has been heard. It might be a child who's nonverbal. They might be showing you something and you can say, that's a really lovely flower. Thank you for showing me. and then expand. As I say, those two things overlap a little bit. So we're repeating the child's statement and very gently expanding it, just very, very gently. That's one of the easiest things to do, because once you get into the habit of it, you can just do it all the time. It's just, you just expand the sentence. You just put in an extra word, that the mud was sticky and squelchy, It's not just mud, it's sticky, squelchy mud. Add in some extra words, and you can put 1 or 2 words in, depending on the child and the child's development. But that's generally an easy way to expand their vocabulary. And then the last one is conversation. So again, just bringing it all together into a lovely conversation with the child. And that was the next thing I was going to go on to, was the we are so lucky working in early years that we have this very precious thing that never really happens again once children start in formal education, which is time. We have time to sit and talk to them. It might not be ages, but for a child, a conversation of 2 minutes is enough, isn't it, sometimes? And we have the time to engage with them and be respectful and have these lovely respectful interactions with them, and high quality interactions. This is something that is gone once they start school. I'm not saying you never have high quality interactions, but generally speaking, then you're on the roller coaster of timetables and everything's ticking along, isn't it? Whereas in the early years, we can sit down and look at daisies, and we can look at a bird flying along, and we can sit down and watch a bus going past, or we can get on the bus and watch the bus and talk about the bus. So I would say embrace that. Try whenever possible to just grab that opportunity to have those conversations with children, because they're so vitally important. And as I say, they'll be vitally important later on as they go into school and they understand how the two-way flow of conversation works. One thing I was going to say was that I'm also an Elkland accredited setting. And one of the things we have in Elkland is not to ask too many questions. So this isn't part of Shrek, but I think it's quite a useful thing to add on. If you are fully engaged, again, I've spoken to some of you about this sort of thing before, but imagine you were fully engaged yourself. You're reading your favorite book, for example. You're totally absorbed in that story and the characters and what's happening. And I come along and I say, oh, I love your book. What color is the cover? And where did you buy it from? And how many pages have you read? That would break your engagement instantly. It might put you off completely. You might just put the book down and walk away and think, well, I've lost track now. I can't read it anymore. And that's what we're doing to children when we keep asking them questions all the time, especially when they're engaged. There's nothing wrong with asking questions, but it's knowing when to ask them and when to step away. So I think someone that I was in when we were at the conference at Holland-on-Sea overheard me say, be like a vampire. And what I mean by that is go in when you're invited. Don't push your way in. Don't force yourself into that child's engagement, because sometimes that engagement is so vital that we're breaking it to try and fit in some communication or some education when actually that's already going on. But what you can do, if you want to still keep that communication going, is you can be along the lines of the Reggio Emilia approach, where you're next to the child and you're using communication, but you're maybe talking about your own experience. So for instance, if the child's painting a picture, they're focused, they're fully engaged, you can sit next to them and paint your own picture. You can talk about the colors you're using, or the whatever it is you're actually painting, or you remembered something. So I'm going to add in, when we went to the beach, I'm going to paint the sand and that type of thing. So you can use lots of communication without asking questions. And generally speaking, in Elkland, we say it's 5 comments to 1 question. So you can comment on what the child is doing. Excuse me, I'm just going to have a sip of water. You can say, I love those colours. I love the way you've mixed the yellow and the blue together. Or the sea looks really rough in that picture you're painting. Was that the day that we went? Well, not that, you should be asking a question. The sea looks really rough in that picture. Or there are lots of birds in that tree. you can add those comments in so that the child is still taking in that communication, is still storing all those extra words, but you're not breaking their engagement. And that's quite a helpful thing to do. It's very tricky as an adult, I think, to have silence. We expect to talk and we expect children to respond, but actually children's brains obviously aren't wired up quite as ours are just yet. So for them to take in a question, process it, and then express the answer, it takes some time. So when you are having a conversation with a child, you have to leave a gap, up to about 10 seconds sometimes, for a child to respond. And it's really hard as an adult to do that. And so we keep asking question after question after question to try and fill that space. And it's not necessarily an effective way of supporting communication. So leave a little bit of space for the child to answer any questions if you are in a conversation. And don't feel you have to ask questions all the time. That's not necessarily an effective way of getting the child to respond. Sometimes you just need to back off a little bit and leave them to have a little bit of time to do their own thing if they're completely engaged. Two other things I wanted to talk about was using words in context, as we've just said, a deep hole, a really huge tree, sloppy wet sand, that type of thing, because that's so vital for children later on. It's really important that they get to know words in context and not just words that you've read out in a book, because as lovely as it is and amazing as it is to read, if a child experiences something, it's embedded. Whereas if you're just reading it, it doesn't necessarily have the same effect. You can read it later and then it will make sense. Because they'll have experienced it. And, you know, we know what a windy day feels like. But if you just read a story that said it was a windy day, it's not quite the same as being outside and it's a windy day, because then you have that experience embedded. And on that note, the other thing I wanted to just mention was interactive reading. Again, not part of Shrek, but evidence shows that interactive reading, where children are really engaged and taking part in reading, has a much greater effect on their communication development than if you're just an adult reading a story to the children and the children are sitting there passively taking the story in. Some of you might be signed up already for our sessions that we've got in Highwoods with the storytelling in the woods. And that story is going to be, we're going on a bear hunt. So it's a really good example of what we mean by this, because we will be acting out the bear hunt story through Highwoods. And you'll be squelching in the mud and you'll be running through the forest and stumble and trip and that type of thing. You'll be going through the long wavy grass. And those things really make a lot more sense. They would to adults as well, but they do especially to children if you're experiencing them. So if you're able to either come along to some of those sessions and see how that works in practice, or even at home, it's so easy. Don't just sit and read the book, but really engage in that book. So you're stomping your feet when you're going on a bear hunt, or you're using expressions, you're getting children to join in with the interactive thing. You know how children, if you have a book that they're familiar with, will join in with a refrain if you leave the gap. So, you know, can't go over it, we can't go under it, oh no. And then if you left the gap, the children, because they're familiar with the book, would say, we've got to go through it. So they would be interacting with the book. There'd be an active partner in the reading rather than just a passive partner. Nothing wrong with passive reading at all, especially when you've got children that are tired, they just want to snuggle and hear a story. But if we're thinking about communication development, having that interactive element to it just makes the world of difference. And you can do it with all sorts of stories, can't you? It's very easy to interact like that. So I'm just going to summarize for you what Shrek meant again. Shared attention, so getting down to their level, responding and expanding. So responding to whatever it is the child is trying to tell you, gently expanding the vocabulary by adding one extra word maybe, or two words, depending on what the context is. And having conversations, actual conversations where you're on the same level as the child and you're talking about something together. Don't have to be long, don't have to be complex, but it's really, really important for children's communication development. And then think about whether you're asking loads and loads of questions just to fill space, because when you're in a conversation with a child and they're not responding, it's tempting to ask questions instead. Instead, take a step back, just wait and give them time to respond. Or if they're fully engaged in something, try that where you're alongside and you're sort of modeling communication by talking about things, but not expecting a response from the child. They'll still take it in, but you don't have to ask questions all the time. And using words in context and interactive reading. So they would be my things that I would say, if you can, you probably are doing all of those things already, but if you can keep those in your head, that's the way to really have high quality interactions with children that really support the communication development in the early years. And then, of course, that has such a knock-on effect once they get to school and further on. So, I mean, I hope I've sort of rushed through that. I hope I haven't rushed too much, but I want to leave some time so we can share ideas about how you support communication in your settings, best practice. Have you got any ideas or sort of life hacks, we would call them now, wouldn't we, of things that you do? And I've got a couple of things here that I can show as well that I do with the children that I look after. But or if anyone's got any questions or anything at all, now is the time to pop your hand up, and Damon will unmute you, I think. We'll see if anyone's going to ask any questions. While we're waiting, I'll show you the things I've got that I use as oh, you can also put things in the chat, I forgot to say. And at the top of the chat, if you scroll right up to the top, thank you, Siobhan. If you scroll right up to the top, I've put a link to the Shrek poster, just to as a reminder of what the different letters stand for. Again, some of you will have already seen these things. This is something I use as an aid to communication with the children in my setting. These are those very simple photo books, and I do it from the photo books app on my phone. You could do it on an iPad or however you want to do it. You get a free one every month. They cost virtually nothing. You just pay for the postage. And it's just a selection of pictures. I do them maybe 2 a term of things that we've done. So there we are. Look, we're on an outing. We've been somewhere, playing with some petals. It's someone's birthday, that type of thing. Having something like this is a really good way to spark communication and conversation, because there are no words in these books. I don't need to put words in there because we use them all the time to look at them and just talk about, oh, that's so and so and so and so. This is when we went to the park. Oh, do you remember when you painted that picture? It's especially useful if you're going somewhere that you haven't been for a little while, and you can look at the pictures and say, oh, do you remember when we went to the museum? We're going to go there again today. Because obviously for young children, time whizzes by and they don't always remember things from a while ago, do they? But this is especially useful for children who are getting to that stage where they want to talk about people's names and identify people, because you can just look through and you can say, oh, that's so and so, and look what he's doing, is playing with the petals. So I would definitely recommend doing those if you can. They're so easy to do, cost virtually nothing, and they're really sort of cheap and easy, and a good way to look back on things. The link to Shrek, oh, you've got it, Lorna, yeah. Also, if you have, like me, you have children that might only come in the holidays, it's a good way for the younger children to remember who they are, because you can look back at the pictures and say, oh, this is when so-and-so was here. Do you remember? And we're going to see him next week. So that's a really helpful way to do that. I've got one more thing to show you, unless anyone's got any questions. Let's have a look. Oh, okay, Siobhan, I love that idea. I get the parents to create a photo album with their children. I keep it the setting. Yeah, that's a really lovely idea. It's really anything with photos in, because it's real. It's a bit like what I was saying about words in context. Words, looking at pictures, real photos makes a big difference. I mean, I think there's evidence to show that it just has better impact on children than using sort of symbols, for instance, about, you know, you can have a visual timetable made with symbols, can't you? But for very young children, that symbolic understanding hasn't always kicked in yet. So looking at real pictures of them, their family, their pets, their house. Yeah, we do something similar where we have pictures of everyone's house, their front door, and we stick them on these wooden blocks so it looks like they can make their own street, you know. It's quite an easy thing to do. So thank you, Siobhan. That's a really lovely idea, actually, isn't it? They can all look at that, and it's a really nice way of them feeling like they're belonging, but you're also supporting communication, aren't you, at the same time? Oh, thank you, Claire. Yeah, they're really good, these little books, aren't they? And they're just a very cheap and easy way to support communication, I think. We look at them all the time, every day we've got those books out. Okay, Melinda's going to start printing some pictures. Lovely. Oh, Lisa has a question.
Oh, hi,
I'd
Kim.
like to say, where are you? Oh, yeah, go on.
Hello. Thank you for tonight. It's been really great, and thank you for doing this for us. I was just going to say, talking about the picture books, they're absolutely empowering, whether they're of what your children are doing or whether they're the family books. We use the family books a lot at work. But what we've also done and recently is allowing children access to be behind the lens, so they take ownership of the photos. And that we have noticed the conversations that are coming out of that are really, really rich, because it's so empowering that they took that photo, they did that themselves, and it's also a really great way to observe children, because they can take photos of things that they are interested in, and also for those children that can't necessarily communicate verbally, you can use these pictures as a tool of communication. So it's almost like a way of observing. So they take pictures of things that they like within your setting, and you get that understanding if they can't communicate verbally. So photos are an excellent tool for both verbal and non-verbal communication.
Yes, totally. I completely agree. It's just anything like that is really helpful, isn't it? Yeah, I quite often just it's a bit different for childminders, isn't it? I know in a larger setting you've probably got your own dedicated sort of iPad or something, but I just give the children my phone and let them take pictures of whatever they want to take, you know, or even funny things like we use filters, and they do selfies with filters, and then they just want to share those and talk about them. And it's just anything really. Photos are a really just brilliant tool, aren't they? Okay, what have we got? We've got Lorna made a family photo album for each family. That's lovely. Yeah, it's really important, isn't it? I think it's going slightly off the communication topic, but one of the things that Julian Grenier, who is the writer of the revised EYFS, says that children should be able to see themselves. So in a setting, you should have a window on the world and a mirror on for them. So they should be able to see themselves in your setting. So having something like that, a family photo album, or even just a few photos of them and their families or whatever, is just really, really brilliant. And also it's really good for the other children, isn't it? You can all look at them together. You can talk about the differences in families and how one family might have a dog, another family's got rabbits, you know, one family, the grandma lives in the house, or in another family, the grandma lives in Australia. And, you know, it just opens up a world of conversation, doesn't it? And sometimes those sort of little conversation starters can be really, really helpful to have for children. Danielle, we have pen pals, other childminders up and down the country. We love sending letters and pictures and receiving letters and pictures. It's great to read to the children, and also send each other little colouring sheets, postcards of our areas, maps from the local zoos, etc. What a fantastic idea. How did you come up with that, Danielle? Did you just do it on some sort of group? I'll wait and see what she says, because that's a great idea, isn't it? Oh, from a Facebook group. That's such a good idea, Danielle. I think it really is. Really, really good idea. So if anyone else has got any ideas for best practice, how you support communication in your setting, just pop them in the chat, or you can come on and actually talk about it if you want to. I'm sorry, I didn't notice that Lisa had her hand up just then, but put your hand up and you can have a chat. It's only me. I'm quite happy to chat to you. While we're waiting, I'm going to show you the other thing that I brought along to show you, which is, I call these communication cases. Again, Claire's seen these, but this was all about learning words in context for children, or just having words in context in communication and conversation with children. But I wanted something I could share with the families, because I can do all of that, but it's quite hard to explain that sometimes to parents who haven't got an early years background. So I've made these little cases. It would be tricky to show them on the camera, but I'm going to show you. So I've got different types of themes. This one is the seaside theme. It's got a boat, a little bucket, a mermaid, some shells, a jar of sand, some crabs, little crab things, all sorts of random, anything that's seasidey. And to go along with it, I also have a couple of books that are about things to do with the seaside. And I have several different cases like this. This is the seaside one. I have a shopping one, a tea party one, hairdressers, oh, and a digger construction type one. Yeah, Lorna, a little bit like a talking sack, but yeah, with a theme, but not really, not like a story sack. So it doesn't have to tell us a particular story. It's more open than that. The idea is that you play with the toys with your child, or the resources with your child, and then you use words in context while you're talking about them. So you're saying, yeah, you're digging a big hole, you're scooping up the gravel, you're the mermaid is swimming under the sea, the fisherman is sailing in his boat, that type of thing. And I always say to the parents, don't worry if you don't remember to do those things. It really doesn't matter. It's just to try and get the conversation going and trying to remember to include some of these words. So yes, Lorna, I'd like, yeah, to explore language and try and expand language without the parents feeling too much like it was homework for them. And they absolutely love them. They're always out on loan. This is the only one I've got at home at the moment. The others are all out on loan. They just take them home. It cost me virtually nothing to make. It was stuff that I had around the setting or bought from charity shops. And then the children choose which ones they want to take home. They keep them as long as they like. There's nothing valuable or precious in them. That it doesn't matter if anything gets broken or lost. And I put a little crib sheet in for each one for the parents, just explaining what I mean by using words in context like that, exploring language and expanding language. And it's just been really popular. I've been doing those for a couple of years now, and I've included a couple of new ones. So, for instance, the hairdressing one has also My Little Ponies that I found that have long hair, and some hair clips and some hairbrushes, and a magazine about cutting hair and hairdressing. The digger one has some of that tape that you can that looks like road tape. Has some gravel and some stones and some diggers. Excuse me. The tea party one has a little china tea set and some herbal tea bags and some cupcake cases and party invitations and things like that. So you can use them for anything really. But yeah, it's all about just expanding language and helping parents to be involved in that as well, because I think it can be quite daunting for parents who aren't necessarily from an early years background or sort of understand what I'm trying to get at. And by doing it for a playful way, that really helped. I did do a few videos actually on our private group that we have, just me and my families, of what they are and what they would sort of expect to do with them. But again, no pressure. They don't have to do anything. So yeah, has anyone got any other questions or anything else that you use in your setting would be really helpful, because it's very helpful for all of us to share best practice and to have ideas of how we're all working and doing different things. Anything like Danielle's is particularly helpful. It just inspires other people, doesn't it, to do different things.
Hi Kim, sorry. A bit like your story sacks, we've got we make, like, they're quite cheap to buy on Amazon. They're like clear bottles with black tops. We fill them with water, and we tend to put in like really small little things that have got like the same, begin with the same sound, so that you can focus on that one phonics alliteration side. So just like little like sensory tubes, really. So when they're baby, you know, we put glitter and all of that sort of thing in. But as they get older, we start to put little objects in there, and they become like a conversation piece. What can they find in the bottle and stuff like that? So we use, you know, it's quite simple just to find little tiny objects, like cake decorations and all stuff like that. But a bit like your story sack, but as I say, on a much smaller scale.
Yeah, no, but anything like that's really helpful, isn't it? And sometimes having small things is helpful anyway, because, you know, you can take it out with you if you're going, child's in the buggy or something, they can look at it while you're going along, or, you know, because you can have communication and conversation anywhere about anything, can't you?
Yeah, especially using like signs in the environment, the print in the environment and things like that. Just really like taking note of all of those things, so they understand that print has meaning, and to build communication.
Yeah. One thing I was going to include a little bit about a text-rich environment, but I didn't think I'd have enough time, but maybe I will. So yeah, that was one of the things I was going to say, was that having text in the environment is really useful, isn't it? Because, as you say, it shows children that print has meaning, or text has meaning, but it doesn't have to be, that doesn't mean you have to have those laminated posters of the alphabet or anything, or the weather or anything like that. It's things like I have things like home sweet home signs, or cushions that have words on them, or calendars and things like anything with text, because it's just all around us, and it's everyday text that is quite interesting for children, isn't it? You know, magazines and takeaway menus and that type of thing. Maps, maps are just brilliant, aren't they? They're just they're amazing, especially if you can get a big map and you can lay it out on the floor, and the children can actually get onto the map, and you can draw on it and color it in and talk about where the things are, and the stations and the train station and the beach, that type of thing. So yeah, I agree. Text everywhere is really important, isn't it? In a, you know, again, in context. So Lorna says, yes, I spy jars and talking boxes. Very similar thing, Lorna, isn't it? So do you have those, Lorna, in your setting?
No. Oh, that's it. Sorry.
Are you on there?
Yes. Hi, sorry, I was trying to work the right button.
No, yes, that's okay.
We have I spy jars, and with where they're not glass jars, they're plastic. But with the, you know, to encourage them to actually look. So they might be things. So I might have split peas or lentils, or, you know, and they've really got to look to see what they can find, and they might be themed, you know, so there might be farm animals, or they might be something to do with a particular theme. And the talking boxes might be something that they're interested in, but then expands their language to, they're interested in trains, but we might have tracks, and we might have different things to do with trains. They wouldn't necessarily know the language for couplings, you know, where the trains, but you know, that's more in the talking boxes. So they'll have things like that, but it's different from reading it from a book.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you see what I mean? Because they can actually feel and experience and handle the objects. So the I Spy jars are for young ones, to build on recognition and knowing what things are. But the talking boxes are more, if a child's got a particular interest, then I can build a talking box around that, to expand their vocabulary.
Wow, that's brilliant. So you make them individually, like bespoke for that child, depending on their interest.
Yes.
Yeah, that's brilliant. But then I suppose, most of us have got a lot of resources, haven't we, that you can just pull on, and like if it's dinosaurs, you've got a lot of dinosaurs or trains or whatever.
Exactly. And you can bring different things in that if it is dinosaurs, you might, I'd make something out of Play-Doh that looks like a dinosaur tooth.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will make things to add in, and scales and that sort of thing. So
no, they're really brilliant ideas. I love those ideas, and you're so right. It's using those objects in real life embeds, it's in context, so it embeds it more, doesn't it? The language is embedded, and it makes sense to the child. The coupling means when they stick together.
Yes.
How would you even know that if you read it in a book? It wouldn't make any sense at all, would it?
No. But it's not just a magnetic thing, it's something that clicks over.
Yes.
So you have to find something. We did dinosaurs, and I made dinosaur bones out of Play-Doh. So they could, they could and then we buried them in the sand and dug them up, and so they could really experience what like what it was to find dinosaurs themselves, as opposed to just reading about it.
Yeah, so, brilliant. Yeah, I mean, books are amazing, aren't they? I would never want to diminish the power of books and the power of reading, but for children especially, they haven't got those references to pull on that we have they? Because we know what that means. If you read a book and it says so and so dug up a fossil, well, you'd know already, wouldn't you? But a child doesn't necessarily understand what that means, and so you're so right. Doing it in real life, hands-on, is the thing that makes sense for the children, isn't it?
And with that, to add in maths, I did different size bones, so then they could sort them into different sizes and different shapes. Brilliant. Yeah, so it was
a great idea. I think that's brilliant idea, isn't it? And I guess one thing we've got as childminders, one advantage we have is that we can go out and do these things, can't we? We could go, you might not be able to go and dig up fossils, but you could go to the train station, you could go on a train journey, can't you?
Exactly.
Depending on what the child's interests are, you could go and dig on the beach and hope to find some shark's teeth or something, couldn't you? Or some shells. But we have that sort of, it makes it even richer, doesn't it? Because there's so much communication going on in all of those experiences. It's brilliant. Thank you, Lorna. That's really, really helpful to know. I'm just going to have a look at Danielle. Danielle says, May is National Share a Story Month. We collect books over the month. People donate books to us and bag them up with a little note and hide them around our local area. Any books from children's, recipe, autobiography, etc. Last year I had over 150 books, and this month I've been given 700 books. That's amazing. And children love hiding them. Danielle, that's amazing. I've seen that locally to us, where people leave books laying around with a little note in saying "Take me home," which is really lovely, isn't it? That's great. What a great thing to do. If anyone's interested, a charity that I volunteer with, we do children's Christmas presents, and I get books. I'll put my email address in here, and you can email me if you're interested. We get books from a publishing house in Essex, and they're what you would call remainder books, ones that haven't sold very well. They are all brand new, and they will send you boxes and boxes and boxes of them for free. So if anyone wants to do that, or is working, if you're a early year setting, or you run a toddler group or anything like that, they'll just send them out to you. I'm putting my email address there. Look, if anyone's interested in that, let me know, and I'll send you the link. But yeah, I think it's better for them to be able to give the books out than to help them, I think, is the idea there. So that's so, Lorna, that was really brilliant. Thank you. And I agree. If you email me, Danielle, and I'll find the link and send it to you. So what we've got, so with what we're sort of coming up with is that we're in the lucky position, aren't we, that we have time to spend with children. We have the ability to work with the child's own interests. We're working with fairly small groups, aren't we? So we can sort of, as Lorna was doing, make up those bespoke boxes, which is just fabulous, isn't it? And we can interact on the child's level. So we can do that eye level thing. We can respond. We can expand. We can use words in context that are real to that child, that really mean something to that child. And all those things are having such a massive, massive effect on children's communication as they start school, because obviously that's the transition we're leading up to, isn't it, with most of them. And yes, I definitely agree that books, and if you want to share books or hide books, I think most of us now have the things where we share books with families, don't we? And we sort of have a basket of books by the door or something like that for the children to take home. And if you don't, that's a very easy thing to do. And you can either use some books you've already got, or go to a charity shop and buy some books and pop them in there. And of course, going to the library is just the easy thing, isn't it? If you live near a library. I run the library rhyme time at a local library near us twice a month. And it's just a lovely thing to do. And again, I try and read stories, but also put some sort of interaction with it. We use signs, or we're using lots of expression and that type of thing if we're reading, or we're singing songs. So anything like that where you can really embed that communication and make those words make sense to the child, then that really, really helps. I really hope some of you will have signed up for the storytelling sessions. If you haven't, if you message the Stronger Practice Hub, we've got 3 sessions coming up, and they're all fabulous. They're run by a teacher who does this as her sort of second job. And they're, as I say, they're hands-on, interactive. You're actually going into the woods looking for the bear. I know Claire has been on some of these sessions before, haven't you, Claire? So you are actually going to look for the bear in the woods. It's not scary for any little ones. It's fine, isn't it?
I was just going to say they're really good. I love her sessions.
Yeah, we've been going to her sessions for quite a while, and I think you have as well.
Years now.
Yeah, and she does a sort of quite a sort of rotates quite a few familiar stories. But we thought Bear Hunt was particularly accessible for these sessions. So they're free for us. They're funded by the Stronger Practice Hub. So please take advantage of it, because you can go along, you can do a story where, if for anyone who's not familiar with Highwoods, it's right next to a lovely play area, and there's a visitor centre where you can get drinks and ice creams, and there's toilets there and that type of thing. But most importantly, you'll get to take part in these amazing story sessions, and you'll get a goodie bag at the end of it. Jane, there's I think there was a link on the Stronger Practice Hub Instagram page, wasn't there, Damon? Highwoods is in Colchester, Lorna. This lady works in Colchester, and she couldn't, because of her own commitments, she can't go to other places. But it's fairly easy to get to if you're obviously, if you're driving, you can just drive, and there's a car park there. But it's not very far from the train station, and there's trains going straight up there. Well, we've got 2 Mondays booked, Siobhan, and 1 Tuesday to try and sort of bring the changes. But she does work on the other days. She teaches on the other days. So if you could try and make it on one of those other days, I would definitely recommend it. I know she sometimes does sessions in Ipswich if you wanted to travel that far, but they would be ones that you'd have to pay for. This is ones where it's been paid for by the Stronger Practice Hub. And yeah, honestly, as Claire said, her sessions are just brilliant. You get to meet lots of other childminders, just childminders on the session, on the 3 sessions. I'll be there as well. So if anyone wants to have a chat about anything, I'm happy to help out with that. As I say, right next to the play area, and there's a picnic area. There's just everything you can need, really. It's a lovely big country park. Fingers crossed for some nice weather, and then that'll be perfect. One thing I would say is it can be a bit bumpy for buggies, can't it, Claire? I would say if you've got younger children in buggies, you might have to carry them round. I've struggled to get buggies around the woods because you're really going up and down over logs and things like that. So you might need to just carry the little one around if you've got younger children with you. But she's very good. She's really, really passionate about communication in children and also in learning outside. That's her sort of passion in life, is getting everyone outside and learning. So we thought this would be an opportunity for us to do that as well, and to introduce other childminders to that idea. But I'm sorry, it has to be in Colchester because that's where she is. But hopefully you can make some of those things, some of those sessions. I'm doing another session next week, and it's same time next week, and it's going to be on enabling agency. So for anyone who isn't quite familiar with that phrase, agency just means allowing children to be able to do things by themselves and develop that sense of independence and pride in their own abilities. Super easy to do. I'm also a curiosity approach setting, so that's something we do. It's sort of embedded in our settings, but it's really, really easy to do, and it really supports PSED and all that type of thing. So Lorna, if you come along in one of those sessions, I'll be there, so I'll give you a hand if you want to. You know, you're not walking for miles or anything. She just makes a little loop in the woods with clues that we have to find until we get to the bear. And honestly, she'll slow down if we've got too many little children, and she's absolutely fine about that type of thing. So don't feel like it might not work for you. I'll be very happy to give you a hand. I'll have on the Mondays, I'll just have my grandchildren with me. On the Tuesday, I've got other children, but they're all walking. So they can just toddle along by themselves. In fact, they're so used to these sessions, they do just go by themselves. And I slouch along at the back, watching what they're up to. Yeah, no problem at all, Lorna. Again, if you email me or something like that, we can get in touch and arrange where to meet. I don't drive, but I come by bike, so I would meet you. I can meet you in the car park there or something like that. So hopefully, yes, please get in touch if I can help with anything. I'm very happy to talk to you the storytelling sessions, and next week we'll be doing enabling agency. And also, please follow the Stronger Practice Hub. I'm sure you probably all do anyway, because this is how you found out about this, I'm sure. But this would be, that's a really good way to get even more support and all types of things. They've got so much going on all the time. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for coming along this evening and for giving up your time to hear me waffle on about stuff. And I hope it's been helpful. And really, thank you so much to all of you that shared your ideas, because that's what we really are hoping for, is that we can share best practice, and that's how we learn from each other, isn't it, as childminders? So yeah, please come along next week, or come along to one of the story sessions, and I'll see you there.